The law matters, and we're here to help you understand it a bit better. Welcome, I'm Debbie Moraes, your host and moderator. This program is designed to make legal topics accessible. We bring you legal information, real-life examples, and practical guidance to help you navigate the law and do it with confidence. A better understanding of the law empowers you to protect yourself, your family, and at times your business. Sometimes you'll find that you can handle some issues yourself. That's great. Other times you may decide that you need professional guidance. And with more and better information, you'll know how to work more effectively with the legal counsel you select. Our goal, of course, as always, is to save you time, money, and stress, and do it at the same time as helping you to achieve the best possible outcome. As always, we want to welcome and thank Attorney David Bizarre of the Bizarre and Associates Law Firm in East Providence. So today, our topic is protests. The right to protest, many of you know, is protected under the First Amendment. We've all seen the recent headlines, large demonstrations, counter-protests, road closures, arrests, and in some cases, obviously violence. So it makes it more important than ever to understand your rights and your limits. So authorities, we know, are required to balance public safety with constitutional freedoms, but the core freedoms that protect us cannot be left unprotected by us. So today, we're going to talk about what the Constitution protects, what the limits are, who has the authority to intervene, what you should know before you decide to protest, and what happens if things happen that shouldn't happen anyway, and they do. So, David, let's just start. Why do protests matter in America anyway? Good, bad, or indifferent? Why do they matter?
Actually, if you think about it, the country was founded on protests. The Boston Tea Party, the burning of the Gaspee. It was all protests against the crown, the King of England, in England, no taxation without representation, and all of the issues of the day. And it was all the colonists protesting the treatment they were receiving from the crown. And so that has something that's been codified into the Constitution when it was created, and it's been a foundational right ever since.
As it should be. And of course, in more recent, well, I guess even in our lifetime, things such as the civil rights movement, women's rights, rights to vote, labor protections, I guess, those have been protests to right to organize. People who are against the environmental issues, people have protested forever.
Right. And in my lifetime, so I'll tell you how old I am, the protests were things that changed the country. So civil rights, the 60s, all of that resulted in changes in the law and how people were treated, how people were given equal rights, the right to vote,
yes,
and all of those things. And before my time, the right in 1920, I think, for women to be able to vote.
Exactly.
And then after I got older, protests that ended the Vietnam War.
Right, I forgot to mention that one. And so it was political too. I mean, and we're approaching these topics now. Honestly, what you're saying, and it's true that protest, the right to protest and protest itself was a very powerful and positive tool for change because it did have that net effect. So by definition, is this begging the question, aren't protests meant to be disruptive?
Yeah.
How do you want to define that?
So there's a certain limit that you really can't go past.
Mm-hmm.
And to take the civil rights movement, two things that strike me as was then versus now. So the protests as they were led by Martin Luther King and those in the civil rights movement were always stressing to be peaceful. And it wasn't the protesters who weren't peaceful oftentimes. It was the people who didn't agree with the protesters, the counter-protesters, and many times law enforcement. Imagine that.
It happened. Imagine that.
Right. And so The president now might point to that and say, well, look, the federal government called out the National Guard, so I can call it the National Guard. But the National Guard was called out then to protect the protesters, not to impede the protesters.
We're going to get into that. I mean, in the name of Insurrection Act or whatever. Let's do a drill down about that in a bit. But so if we think of that as being a powerful tool, and you mentioned that it was important for it to be peaceful, it seems that most start out to be peaceful. You have a sign. You're disrupting the course of communications, but you're not necessarily supposed to be disrupting traffic. It's a whole different story. So the right of peaceful assembly is one of the tenets, right? You're supposed to be able to do that. So let's assume some of our viewers are considering participating and or starting. They have a First Amendment right to do this. What actually is covered in that before we get into the details of how you organize and conduct one peaceably? So what does the First Amendment give people the right to protest? How does that work? Yeah,
so as you said, the right of assembly, the right to petition the government with grievances, and the freedom of speech. So what we have done as a country is said, yes, you have the right to protest. You have the right to assemble. However, in the interest of public safety, that can be regulated to some degree. For example, folks who want to protest at Planned Parenthood can do that, but they can't interfere with people going in and out or be physical or do anything that threatens the safety of anyone. So many times there are places where you can't go, barriers to where you can be, or in the alternative, places where you are designated to protest. Those are valid things because you're balancing public safety with the right to protest.
And you point out public. So the right to protest is the right to protest in public areas.
Right. But the particular area can be regulated so that, as you said, you're not supposed to disrupt traffic. You're not supposed to make it unsafe for other people. Those are safety issues that have to be balanced against your right to protest. So a city or a town might say, yes, you can protest, but here's the area where we want you to be.
And on that list are streets and parks, not obstructing people's passages or cars, although we had that a few years ago. It was on Route 95. Someone decided to put a U-Haul truck across north, 95 north or south, I can't remember, and another car. That's definitely not what was planned at all, obviously. No. So you can do it on public property. If it's public property, do you need to have a permit?
Oftentimes, yes.
And how would you know?
Yeah, so there's ways, you contact well, depending on what city or town,
if it's
the police and say, all right, we have a planned protest. What do we need for permitting? Where can we do it? Where can't we do it? You need to lay all those details out. If you're planning this in advance, it's the right way to do it.
And what about if you want to protest on private property? If it's your property, one thing. Suppose it's on someone else's private property. Are you allowed to do it? How can you do it? And is it legal?
That would be trespassing if they don't want you there.
You have to ask first.
You would have to have permission in advance.
Would you say it's safe to say that it's not advisable to do that because there's probably more legal hoops to jump through or more possible risks or problems associated with that? Better to be in public? It
would depend on the situation and the property. I couldn't imagine somebody who owns a mall or a shopping center saying, oh yeah, please feel free to come here and set up picket lines and protest and all of that. That would be not good for their business, probably, and not something that they would want. But, there may be other places where they would invite you and we support you and we want you to do this. We agree with you. So it's a situation that would have to be dealt with in advance.
In advance. And it's safe to say that counter-protesters, of which there are many often, they have the same rights to protest public places if the protesters need a permit, do the counter protesters need a permit too?
100%.
Okay.
You really need to have the permission to be where you're going to be. And frankly, public safety might say that we want the protesters here, the counter protesters there, and we really don't want you to meet in the middle.
Good to know. So when we talked again about the First Amendment, you have the right to speak out. What about the limitations or the parameters about noise and movement and what you can do? What about those issues, David?
So there are certain issues. When you talk about free speech is free speech, except there are limits. It's not an absolute right. And of course, the example Louise ever gives is?
In the theater, you can't yell fire.
Correct, right. So there are certain things that you can and cannot do that might push a limit. But to get back to more specifically as to what you said, you can have signs. You can say rotten things if you want.
Even to the police, you have the right to do that.
You can even say
not
rotten
nice,
things to the police.
Legal.
It is not nice. It's probably not appropriate or
not
effective,
smart even,
and not smart. So to go to that, what you can't do is you can't interfere with the police in the job that they are trying to do. And so if you want, you can talk about ICE and what they do and what you're allowed to do and not do, but I'll leave that to you.
So if you'd like to go there, I think, so one thing we want to say about the freedom of speech issue, you can yell, you can protest, you can say, you're a bad person.
Yep, you can do that.
When you say to the group of other protesters, go get them.
Yeah, so now
what?
You're going to be starting to cross a line of speech to action, and action that might be considered, well, it's kind of like what happened on January 6th. You could protest that you don't think what happened with the election was correct. You can say we really feel that there were things that shouldn't have happened. That's all fine. But you can't say, go get him and go hang
him.
A vice president who's in the process of doing his constitutional job and breach property and smash windows and hit police officers. All of that is illegal.
Right.
That's not protesting. That's violence, and that is not protected.
That is not the peaceable assembly that you referred to initially.
It is
so
not.
So clearly, they've crossed the path. So at some point, once that happens, there is what did the police say? A clear and present danger. Does that mean all bets are off as to what police or anyone else that they call in National Guard? Does that mean all bets are off once the breach has happened and they've crossed over to the illegal line?
If you crossed over the illegal line, the police have the right to shut the protest down. Shut
it down. That's not the same as saying we can arrest you all right now. We can shoot you right now.
Yeah.
Well, now is your entry too.
So, and again, it depends on the situation and what's happening. So, you have the right to peaceably assemble and protest. You have the right to blow whistles and do things of that nature. You do not have the right, for example, if we're talking about ICE and they're in the process of arresting somebody, to interfere with that arrest. Even if you think it's not a legal arrest, that's not for you to determine, and you cannot interfere with a law enforcement officer doing his job. You cannot do that. If a law enforcement officer pushes somebody to the ground and you try to lend a hand to help that person up, that doesn't give the law enforcement officer the right to shoot you.
Pretty clear.
Pretty clear.
So why is there such a debate?
I don't know. I will say this, that let's just say that person was in the process of being arrested, which it wasn't, right. And you were trying to help them up and you shouldn't have been. again, they could move you back, they could restrain you, they could do things to you. It doesn't give them the right to shoot you. Because the only time an officer has the argument that they have a right to shoot someone is if their life or someone else's life is in danger.
Clear and present danger as they see it. But the perception of clear and present danger is a hotly debated issue right now, which is, I guess, why they're saying you as a protester, you as a police officer might now more than ever need to have a camera on you if you're the police officer, a phone if you happen to be a protester who's about to be accosted, arrested, or anything. In fact, let's jump to, or make that transition to, so suppose you are confronted by the police and you are going to be arrested. What are your rights and what should you do?
My advice would be, regardless of what your rights may or may not be, don't argue, don't put up a protest, just
go along.
Just go along.
Take out your phone?
If you can, yeah, absolutely.
Ask for his name? Ask for his badge?
So your rights are to do all of those things. And so my concern about taking out the phone is they don't know what you're reaching for.
Is it a phone?
Yeah. But if you have your phone out already, they know it's a phone. They should know it's a phone.
Okay.
And then you have the right to say, what are you, first of all, identify yourself. What is it that you're detaining me for? And you have the right for them to explain all of that. And if they're coming to arrest you for something that they didn't see you do, because there's a difference between if they see a crime, but they're coming to arrest you,
there's a difference.
There should be a warrant. Now, there's a big debate about what is the difference between a judicial warrant and an administrative warrant. So,
okay, what is the difference, David?
So, typically, for someone to be arrested by a warrant, a police officer would go to a judge or a magistrate, give them the reason for the probable cause for the arrest, and then the independent judicial officer, the judge or the magistrate, will say, yep, there's enough probable cause, and sign it. What they've been doing in immigration issues is the agency has been signing off on the warrants. Oftentimes, I've understood the officers themselves are signing off on the warrant.
So when it comes to the protest time, it starts off peaceably. They build up a lather, and it's trouble, and it suddenly turns to questionable crisis, or at least maybe a riot, maybe not. How does the police officer get the time to say, excuse me, I've got to go get a warrant before?
No, that's different.
Very different, okay.
Yeah, because that's when I said they've actually observed
it, and
they have the probable cause
right there
for an arrest right there.
So before there's probable cause for an arrest, there seems to be any number of things that a police officer or their cadre could do first, such as, you all have to disperse. There's not the door. There's the pathway with which you all need to leave right now because someone's going to get hurt, or there's a, whatever you say, clear and present danger, or you're blocking whatever. There's a lot of, it seems like there's some lot of latitude before this escalates. So you're a protester. Is there anything you can do to help de-escalate that? I mean, it seems to me before something goes from yelling to fisticuffs and someone's down on the floor and on the ground with a knee on their neck or a gun to their head or whatever these other terrible acts of violence have been. How do you de-escalate it? Can you, as a person, a protester or counter-protester, what can you do? Yeah,
you can do a lot. You can turn to all the people there and say, let's pull back. Let's take a step back from this. And you oftentimes see this unfolding where the police officers or law enforcement will push forward and the folks should be pushing back and maybe push back on your own. Give some space. Take it down. So yes, the answer is yes. Those are things you should and can do because, as you said, it should start with peace and protest. And then if it gets a little heated, try to bring it back yourself. If there are people who won't bring it back, don't you be one of those people. Let the police officers, they'll have to deal with those people, and they have the right to deal with those people who are over the line, out of control. You can't do that. What the police officer should also be doing is trying to de-escalate it themselves. And so if two reasonable people can try to work something out and say, look, what do you want us to do? You want us to move back? We'll move back. The police officers should instruct, yes, do this. We'll be fine. The next thing that's going to happen is people don't do that, and then they'll start firing smoke and flashbangs and those kinds of things. And that tends to escalate it. So you would hope on both sides that cooler heads prevail.
So at times they've said, well, we needed to arrest them because they were the agitators. They were the people who were doing something that was illegal. And then there are those who end up being caught in the fray and they didn't do anything illegal and they get arrested too. Should they have ever been arrested just because they were there around, surrounding, perhaps even maybe in some way supporting, if not doing the illegal act or whatever that was? Should they be arrested, or should the police officer say, you in the car, you leave?
Yeah. So at certain times, the police officer is not going to be able to actually distinguish between who's doing what.
Fair point.
And so they have to control the situation. So my advice to the other people who are there is de-escalate, back away, leave, or back, at least back up before you are the one that gets arrested. There are times where getting arrested is not the worst thing in the world either, if you're not being violent and doing anything wrong.
Good point.
But the right response would be, I'm here to protest, and I'm here to let my voice be heard. I'm not here to be violent or to disobey legitimate orders.
So we've been talking about the things that are considered to be legal right now. And since, I believe it was since the George Floyd eruption, that there were 8 states that changed the rules about what peaceable assembly, what a legal protest is the onus on each protester who lives in every state? Is it the onus on him or her to go and look at what the state's current laws are? So I can't tick them all off, but I know Florida was one. I believe Oklahoma was another. I believe Tennessee was one. The rules have changed, and some of them to kind of a severe degree. No more than 3 people. If you have that, you have a coffee clutch, not a protest, some might say. But what goes on under that banner certainly narrows greatly your right to protest. So what happens there?
First of all, you have to know the onus is on you. You have to know the law, because what do they say? Ignorance of the law is no excuse. It's not a defense. So you have to know the law. Now, here would be the interesting thing. What is the law? And so if the law is such that it really inhibits and almost eliminates your right to protest, then you can challenge that law.
How?
So you might have to get arrested. You might have to get arrested for violating the law. My advice would be, I wouldn't want to do that, but if I need to make a point and I want to do that, I will peacefully protest as I know I'm allowed to do under the Constitution. I will not violate any of the rules of the Constitution. Okay. I won't violate the rules of the officers there in the sense that I won't be violent. I will follow legitimate orders and stuff. But if I'm going to be arrested because I protested, I'm going to make this up. I don't know what the law is that you're citing, but I protested on a Saturday at 3 o'clock, and that's not allowed. I would get arrested for protesting on a Saturday at 3 o'clock, get arrested, fight that law on a constitutional basis because it violates my constitutional right to assemble and protest.
Would you also advise, since you kind of know that you're going into this and it's a little murky, would you advise under that circumstance, or maybe even if you are knowingly staying within the rules to the letter of the law, you went to the ACLU website and saw that whole listing, is it smart to have a lawyer lawyer's telephone number close by just in case you get arrested, even if you did nothing wrong and you just happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time? Right. Is that a smart
So
move?
2 things. on my first piece of advice about challenging that, I would have already consulted with a lawyer.
Oh, okay.
I would have already gone through and say, what am I allowed to do? What am I not allowed to do? What would be protected? What does this, before I even did it, does this law violate my right to protest?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't challenge it if I had legal advice that, no, it's okay, you're not going to win that. Don't do it. So I would, well in advance, want to know what the law is and what my rights are and whether or not my challenging this law will be successful.
Good point. So it makes me think, as you've said on so many topics that we've covered, document everything. So if you've already seen the lawyer, downloaded the ACLU's listing of whatever, keep that with you. Must come in handy at some point. I don't exactly know what point along that that trajectory, but it might be a good idea to do that.
Yeah, not only that,
okay,
but perhaps whoever is going to represent me would know the day and time that the protest is going to take. They wouldn't necessarily be there, but they could monitor what's going on and be ready to bail you out.
So let's have a little bit of a conversation about who has the right, who has the authority to maintain order. And this speaks to not just the ICE situation, but I believe, and you would know the law, David, isn't it local and state police that are supposed to be taking care of their state? The feds take care of the DEA or the Congress or whatever they have. But isn't it always supposed to be the local police and the state police first?
It depends where, actually.
Where? Okay.
So in the street, in a downtown city, the state and local police would be the ones who are in charge with enforcing the law.
Yep.
If you're protesting at a federal facility, then the federal government has the right to have federal law enforcement people there to protect their facility.
Is it also true that I think I remember this from Governor Garrahy's days, the governor has the right to call out the National Guard for some security or some control of some sort, but that's different from what the president is doing?
Yeah, the state, every state, the governor is in charge of the National Guard. So you're referring to 1978, the blizzard, and Governor Garrahy called the National Guard out for public safety purposes to help remove snow and help people who were stranded and that type of thing. It's always the governor who has the right to call out the National Guard. There are limited situations when the National Guard can be federalized and called out by the president.
He's federalized by the president.
Yep.
And the only thing I've heard lately is the word Insurrection Act. I'm not sure which of those protests.
That's even worse. That's even a step beyond calling out the National Guard to help with something.
That's escalated completely.
Yeah, the Insurrection Act is when they want to bring the military.
The military,
in.
they make them, they deputize or militarize the.
Well, yeah.
That's terrible.
It's
that's another degree.
It's another degree.
We'll save that for another day. The right to protest is really an important fundamental freedom, and of course it has some limitations. It's wise to know yours. We always tell you that the ACLU, we like to provide information that you can use. The ACLU has a website that says Know Your Rights. We hope that this has been helpful to you. We hope you'll continue to stay tuned to The Law Matters. As we say, it matters to you. Thank you for tuning in.